Rain had been forecast, but what arrived instead was a translucent wall that smelled faintly of ozone and seaweed. The news anchors, their hair sprayed into helmet-like defiance, called it anomalous coastal vapor. The meteorologists called it a persistent marine layer. 3 hours later, half the pier in Santa Aurelia vanished as though a cosmic eraser had passed over the wooden planks. By sunset, everyone called it the forgetting fog. Dr. Amaro Ruse had been orbiting that phrase since dawn, turning it over in her sleepless mind while the university campus emptied around her. Cameras caught the pier's disappearance. Boards, gulls, fishing buckets, the old fortune-telling machine, gone. But what froze Amara's blood was the last frame, snagged between 2 jittering seconds of corrupted footage. A gull hung in mid-flap above the pier. Its shadow lay on the vapor below. A heartbeat later, the bird, the shadow, the boards, and 3 meters of air between them dissolved as if someone had clipped them from reality with invisible scissors. The fog didn't merely hide, it deleted. Most fled inland. Amara went the opposite direction. The coastal highway was a carnival of abandoned cars, their owners having traded horsepower for shoe leather in the panic. Amara parked beside a rust-red hatchback that still ticked as its engine cooled, opened her trunk, and hauled out a battered suitcase the shade of wet asphalt. From the outside, the luggage looked ordinary, a scuffed Samsonite she'd picked up at a thrift shop. Inside was her life's work, a laboratory collapsed into quantum folds, each instrument sliced from 3 dimensions to 2, then tiled like nanoscopic origami. It should not have been possible. Compressing mass this way skirted every line of ethical safety protocol on the planet. But here, where a crawling nothingness erased the rules, molecule by molecule, impossible tools were the only kind worth packing. She flipped the case's latches. Instruments sprang into hologrammatic existence. A LiDAR mesh projector, a Bose-Einstein environmental sampler, a paracausal recorder shaped like a cracked kaleidoscope. Each tool clicked onto a telescoping rail she'd welded to the suitcase's spine, forming a skeletal rig that trailed behind her like the tail of an iron kite. She locked her car, though she doubted locks meant much anymore, and started walking toward the fog bank draped over the Pacific. At first, the vapor retreated like a nervous cat, rolling back a meter for every step she took. Then it halted, as though realizing she did not intend to flee. When her boots met the damp sand, the fog advanced again, slow, deliberate, curious. Amara planted a tripod. The LiDAR fired fan-shaped pulses into the whiteness. Returned data came back garbled. Half the photons simply failed to echo. Something was swallowing light the way it swallowed matter. She retrieved a copper coin from her pocket, a flattened souvenir penny embossed with a mermaid. "Baseline," she murmured, and tossed it forward. The coin arced through mist, landed, spun, and blink ceased. The holographic display on her suitcase hiccuped. Mass, null. Coordinate memory, null. Not displaced, not destroyed, null. The universe had forgotten a penny. Amara's mind raced. Quantum decoherence? No. Too orderly. A localized wormhole? But wormholes spat out radiation, and the fog was colder than the air it replaced. Then her recorder chimed. It had logged something toned subaudible, a pattern of negative sound etched into the static. She tuned her headset. Beneath the wind, she heard a hush, not empty but intentional. A silence the way a fingerprint is a touch. "Are you listening?" she asked the fog. The fog did not answer. Yet she felt observed, as if her words traced ink on an unseen page. Night arrived. Streetlights along the shorefront flickered, popped, vanished. Waves of deletion advanced in random pulses, erasing benches, trash cans, chunks of boardwalk. The pattern reminded Amara of neuronal firings, an intelligence mapping its territory by sampling, pruning, rearranging. She opened the suitcase again, pulled out a scaffold of smart fiber, and assembled a bivouac pod. Another compression cheat. Inside, she connected the paracausal recorder to her neural implant, a simple research augment she rarely used outside grant-written season. Tonight she needed every sensor she possessed. When she dreamed, she did not see her usual equations but a library without shelves, Fog drifted through endless aisles, and on each vapor strand hung objects: a photograph, a child's shoe, the fortune-telling machine's brass gears, cataloged, preserved, yet inaccessible. She reached for the photo. It dissolved, not erased, relocated. Woken just out of reach, she jolted awake at dawn. The pod walls were speckled with condensate. Each droplet refracted the rising sun into coppery stars. And something else, a hiss, like a hard drive scraping its platters. She crawled outside. 10 meters away, the fog had rolled back, carved into a semicircle that framed her camp. A gesture of respect or quarantine. "Good morning," she said, heart hammering. She lifted a sealed ampule of fluorescein dye. "Let's see how you move." She popped the cap, threw the liquid into the whiteness. The dye swirled, suspended mid-air, neither diluting nor falling. Then, tendrils of fog pinched the green cloud, sculpting it into a Mobius ribbon that spun once and disappeared. "Not randomness, art," the recorder sang again. "Right, now, layers of negative harmonics braiding into chords that prickled her temples. A sentence? Perhaps. Language carved from absence. If the fog was speaking, she needed to answer in kind. Amara rummaged through the suitcase for objects of no monetary value, yet considerable informational density. A dog-eared paperback, a cracked geode, a bundle of letters her mother had written during chemo. She weighed each story they contained, then chose the geode, ancient, silent, patient. She rolled it toward the fog. Deletion did not claim it. Instead, the vapor folded around the stone, lifting it like a pearl in smoke fingers. A line of blue light sizzled across the geode's face, prying it open to reveal amethyst hearts. The fog held the halves apart, studying them. Then, miracle of miracles, it pushed them back together, rolled the stone gently to Amara's feet, and retreated 3 steps. She knelt, throat tight. The geode was whole, but within its crystals now shimmered miniature replicas of the fog's tendrils, twisting like silver roots inside purple glass. A gift in return? Proof of dialogue. The excitement lasted seconds. A siren howled inland, one long falling note. She climbed a dune to look. In the city core, 9 kilometers away, towers winked out like snuffed candles, floor by floor. The fog appeared not as a wall, but as pop-up voids, stochastic deletion blooming like dark flowers across the skyline. Thousands were still there. Amara slammed the suitcase shut, snapped its wheels into overdrive, and ran. She cut through back roads, hopping gutters where concrete already crumbled into nothing. Cars vanished mid-turn, leaving skid marks with no vehicle to explain them. The fog's pattern had changed. It no longer waited at the shoreline, but jumped ahead, sampling distant nodes, learning at speed. She reached the outskirts as the hospital's south wing folded into zero. A mother shoved her baby into the scientist's arms, begging her to save him. The baby's name tag bore no surname because the father had already been forgotten. Amara guided them toward evacuation buses, idling in a supermarket parking lot, engines roaring in diesel fear. "Are you with FEMA?" a deputy shouted. "I'm with Reality Maintenance," she answered, too breathless to explain the joke. Her suitcase beeped angry warnings. Mass bleed somewhere close. She traced the ping to a statue in the plaza, steel abstract art, half melted into blankness. The deletion front oscillated against the metal like a tide. She realized the fog's incursions weren't random anymore. They were triangulating sources of high informational entropy, places full of stories, hospitals, schools, sculptures that symbolized community memory. The fog was eating meaning, and she alone had spoken to it. Amara pulled goggles over her eyes, tuned the recorder to broadcast instead of receive, and played back the fog's own silence at amplified volume. The effect was instantaneous. Layers of vapor froze mid-lunge. The statue's melting halted. In the hush that followed, she felt the fog's attention whip toward her like a searchlight. She spoke in pieces. "Not. Consumption. Miscommunication. Are you lost?" She fed the recorder tonal gaps, punctuated with pulses representing the geode offer. Return. Trust. The fog softened. Deletion rates dropped across her HUD, but new pulses flared west of downtown, as though other sectors acted independently, deaf to the exchange. A distributed mind then, each tendril a neuron. She needed the core. Satellite data, what fragments remained, located the densest fog, concentration offshore, atop a shoal known to fishermen as Dead Man's Chair. Old myth said a sailor once promised his soul to the deep there. Folklore perhaps, but origin points always hidden story. Night fell again as Amara commandeered a hydrofoil left bobbing at the marina. She lashed her suitcase to the deck, powered the motors, and sliced through black water toward the luminescent bruise on the horizon. The fog, radiant now with stolen city light, formed a dome above the shoal. Lightning flickered inside like neurons firing. At 50 meters out, instruments died. Batteries showed charged yet delivered none. Even her wristwatch forgot seconds and displayed a mocking row of dashes. She cut the engines and drifted, heartbeat loud in the hush. "Intention," she said into the recorder, fingers shaking. "I seek intention." She replayed the phrase in silence, unknits. The dome rippled. A corridor opened, a tunnel of clear air through layered vapor. She pulled the hydrofoil forward with a broken mast until the hull scraped rock. The shoal emerged, a limestone pedestal, riddled with tide pools, gleaming under starlight. The rest of the world could no longer see. In the center lay a hole, perfectly round, descending into blackness. Amara swung the suitcase into backpack mode, climbed down iron rungs bolted to ancient stone. 10 meters, 20. The shaft widened into a cavern lit by faint blue fireflies. No, not insects. Shards of deleted objects, after images flickering in limbo. They orbited a core column of fog, pulsing like a heart. The recorder vibrated as though in storm. She placed it on a rock and watched data spike. Entropy density off charts, local space-time thin as wet tissue. One wrong move and she'd be null. "Hello," she whispered. The column fluttered. Images sparked around her. The pier, the hospital wing, a father holding an empty blanket. The fog was replaying its harvest. Perhaps unaware of the grief it broadcast, she remembered the library dream, objects shelved out of reach. Perhaps the fog thought it was archiving, preservation, not predation. But why the deletions? Why the randomness that became hunger? She dug into the suitcase for her most personal artifact, a Polaroid of her and her sister Anna at age 12, cheeks smeared with tamarind candy. Anna had disappeared 5 years ago, swallowed by opioid relapse and a system that labeled her dropout. A 22/41, no body, no closure. Absorbed by another kind of fog. The photo was the last undeniable evidence that Anna had laughed, once. Amara held the Polaroid toward the column. Vapor tendrils reached, trembled, stopped. She sensed the immense computation behind that pause, a decision tree branching through unspoken ethics. At last the fog lifted one filament and caressed the photograph's edge. Instead of dilation, it projected the image onto every shard in the cavern, multiplying the sisters into a constellation of childhood. Amara's throat tightened. "You can copy without erasing," she said. "Observe without removing." She modulated her voice to the silence frequency, shaping words in absence and presence. The core brightened, swelled. A whirlwind of returned objects cascaded from ceiling to floor. Pier planks, hospital beds, the fortune-telling machine ringing its brass bell. They reassembled mid-air, hovered, awaiting placement. The fog learned, pivoted, reversed its algorithm. But outside this grotto, satellite feeds showed deletion still raging. The mind was changing, yet its distant neurons kept gnawing. How to propagate the correction? She looked at the suitcase, a laboratory compressed into paradox. Its folding architecture was built on principles of non-local entanglement. Every tool inside was simultaneously here and anchored to her campus lab 100 kilometers away. If she sacrificed the suitcase, let it unfold fully, its entangled grid could broadcast the update across the fog's distributed consciousness like a software patch. It would also implode the cavern, and her, and likely the campus lab if the failsafes failed. But the alternative was universal amnesia. Amara opened the case. Instruments blossomed into full-size, snapping air with thunderclap displacements. The LiDAR rig towered overhead, the tripod cracked and reformed into a ring accelerator. Sample trays unfolded like silver lilies. Energy bled into the air, and the fog recoiled, startled by the sudden bloom of structured information. She keyed commands with shaking hands. Entangle, mirror, broadcast. The rig whined, searching for quantum handshake. When the link locked, she uploaded one packet, the act of returning the geode. The photograph multiplied. The concept that observation need not equal deletion. A philosophical prime encoded in spin states. The core column accepted the handshake. Waves of fog pulsed outward, each rosette of vapor lighting, darkening, passing the message like lanterns on a river. Far above, through the shaft, she glimpsed the dome flicker. Null zone stuttered. Objects blinked back into reality amid showers of displaced dust. Stone cracked. The accelerator ring overloaded, metal screaming. Amara slapped manual release. The machine split along predetermined seams, venting plasma into cooling foam. The collapse she'd feared became a controlled dissipation. She sighed so hard her ribs ached. When the brightness faded, the column dwindled to a single wisp that circled her wrist, feather light. A question lingered. What now? Travel, she whispered. Learn. Return. She thought of Anna, unarchived yet not erased, stories waiting to be honored. The wisp spiraled upward, slipping through cracks, rejoining the atmosphere. Silence returned to the cavern. Not absence, but promise. Hours later, rescue drones found Dr. Amara Ruiz sitting atop the shoal beside a scuffed suitcase, its interior empty save for a geode glowing with silver roots. Around her floated debris from 2 harrowing days, drifting back to rightful places on the tide. When asked what had happened, she offered only a tired smile. We negotiated new terms with forgetting, she said. From now on, memory has a choice. Far above, morning sunlight pierced settled mist, painting the world in colors no forecast had dared predict.